Hey YouTube, Snoozy here, and we are going to be going over the martial arts assassin. Now, as you see, the damage here is incredibly slow, and you're probably like, why would I want to play this? You're barely killing the fallen. And there's a good answer to that. Once we get gramped up, our damage becomes insane. So you'll have every 15 seconds, if you don't kick anything, and refresh the orbs around us, you'll drop back down to doing no damage. So this build, you have to constantly be on the move, and it gets a lot better if you're able to grab an enigma for that teleporting. Normally, what we do in these videos is we'll go over the stats, skills, and mechanics and stuff like that. We're going to flip it up a little bit because I thought it'd be more interesting to showcase what the build can do in the beginning of the video rather than having you skip to the end. So we're going to do it a little bit backwards and see how this new format works. But this is the martial arts assassin. You will do fire, physical, cold, and lightning damage. And you have a massive AoE, as you can see. The downside, like I said, is if I don't kick anything within the 15 seconds of the last kick, I'm going to end up missing all of my orbs, and all my damage will go back down to 0, and I'll have to spend that time going back up. Once you get Enigma, or you're fast enough in a dense enough area, this really isn't a problem. However, if you have to backtrack because you took the wrong path or something like that, your damage will drop, and you'll have to go back up, cycle through all of your different skills, and eventually you'll be fine. You'll get all the way through it, do a bunch of damage, destroy everything on your screen, and yeah, there's nothing that can be immune to you. You're doing all of the different kinds of damage in the game except for magical damage. So the character itself is pretty strong. However, you cannot league start this. That's the important part here. This is not a league start build. And what I mean by that is you can't just be at level 1 and start doing this. I mean, you can. It's going to be extremely slow. Every time you kick, you're going to lose your charges. So you're going to have no charges. You're going to kick, or build them up, kick, lose them, build them up, kick, lose them, build them up, kick, lose them. You have to have the claws, which are the mosaic claws, to actually enable this. So in order to level this, what I would recommend if you wanted to league start this is level as a trap assassin first. And what you'll do is level as the fire traps first, all the way until about Act 4. And really what you're going to want to make is a leaf staff in the beginning. The leaf staff is going to be great because it gives you +3 to your fire traps. You're not really going to find anything that's going to be better. Even if you use something like let's say a spirit. A spirit's only +2. You don't have an enigma because you're low level, so you don't need cast speed. You'll get the life and the mana, which is great, but you might not find your Amrune or the 4-socketed crystal sword until much later, and even then it's what, 24, 25 to use the spirit sword. So the leaf staff's going to give you the +3, and it's a Tur-Ral. Realistically, what I do every time I try to level with this build is I go all the way into the Black Marsh and farm Countess until I get the Tur-Ral here, and then another Tal-Eth. Stealth is another real low level armor that you can use, and it gives you run, walk, cast rate, and hit recovery. It's absolutely fantastic, really easy to get, and when you're farming Countess, you're going to get some nice experience because on each level of the tower there's going to be a magic or rare pack. So you'll get nice experience, you'll level up there. Generally, depending on how the RNG is, you'll be probably a level 11 to 13. And if you just so happen to hit level 12, it's going to make your run through Catacombs so much quicker with the Wake of Fire. You're going to run this all the way until Act 4 Nightmare. In Act 4 Nightmare, you're going to switch into the Lightning Sentries, maxing these as you go down, and then utilizing the Death Sentry to explode corpses after they've died. And the reason I'm telling you this is probably the most efficient way to level at a league start or a ladder start, right? You can't level with the Phoenix Strike build efficiently because every time you charge up, and let's say you get 3 charges, you're going for the Chaos Ice Bolt. Whenever you kick with a Dragon Talon, you're going to consume all of those charges, which means you'll have no charges. So you have to build and then consume them, build, consume, and go back and forth. it's not super efficient. If you notice at the beginning of the video, when I'm going through building up my charges, I'm doing almost no damage. It's not until I have all my charges and then I start kicking. And the reason for that is these mosaic claws right here. At the top, you'll see the 50% chance for finishing moves to not consume charges. This is what enables the build. This was added in 2.6, so it's very recent. And that's why this is not a guide. I do not have the amount of hours under this character to say I know how to build it the best way or a very good way. This is just kind of an update of what I've been playing on live and what I found and when you can convert over. And essentially, as soon as you can afford 2 of these mosaic claws, it doesn't even matter really the bases. This could just be a flat claw. Like this one only has 1 to blade ice on the base claw. It's terrible. It's not good. But the 2 claws carry so hard because of how strong they are. And realistically, you're going to want these in a Greater Talon. Greater Talon will have less dex and strength requirements, which means you can pump more into vitality. At the start of this ladder, I could not find any of the Greater Talons, so I opted to go for the Runic Talons and just use a little bit more strength and dex. And then from there, go ahead and if I keep playing the build, I'll transition into the Greater Talons, probably after I pick up the Enigma. So you're going to dual wield both of these claws. At the moment, for our switch of the weapon, we're using Nadges, and that's because we just want the teleport charges to make Chaos Sanctuary runs a little bit quicker. Ideally, you're going to use a Call to Arms here with a Spirit Shield or a Lidless, depending on how much strength. Once you have Enigma, you'll probably have enough for a Spirit Shield. On top of that, we're going to be using the Griffin's Eye. I'm kind of disappointed in the performance with this. I thought it would be a bigger impact for me. I rushed to get the Griffin's Eye on this ladder, and in hindsight, I kind of wish I didn't. I think to play this the best way, I think you don't rush the Griffins, and I think you rush the Enigma instead. I think the Enigma is just going to make it a lot easier to keep your charges up, and they're going to have less downtime. However, Griffins is great because of the cast rate and the 1 skill and the minus resistance. Since we're mostly doing lightning damage at this point, Griffins fits in really well. I would still recommend the helmet, but I would after you get your Enigma first. For the amulet, just a 30 all res because we literally cannot find an amulet with assassin or martial arts skills on it. I'm looking at either using a crafted amulet with cast rate, trying to hit the higher breakpoints for the Enigma teleport. But I'll most likely end up using Amara's for 2 skill, 30 resistances, because I am struggling with resistances currently. Armor, I'm just using a Scalder's for all that magic find on top of it and the +1 skill. You could use a Treachery here and get higher damage with the +2, but you'll lose that magic find. So right now I'm going to keep using the Scalder's, and it seems to be working. The gloves, we're using 2 to martial arts, 20 attack speed gloves, and then really any of the mods like strength and resistances. You really want to get as much resistances on here because currently I am struggling hard with getting resistances. Ravenfrost rings, you cannot be frozen. If you can't find a Ravenfrost, instead of rushing for the Griffins, you could try Kira's. Is Kira's a diadem? I don't remember. It's either diadem, coronet, or circlet. I forget. But Kira's is great because it offers a ton of resistances, and that's really going to help your survivability, and they're generally not too expensive. Right now we're using a string of ears. This is going to be temporary. We're going to swap into an Arachnid's Mesh once ever we get one. That'll give us the +1 skill, the more cast rate to hit the breakpoint for teleporting with Enigma. For the ring, we're going to use something like this, probably, or a BK or a Soj. Really just looking for as much resistances on here. The cast rate's nice, trying to push the breakpoints, and Mana Leech is nice to have before we get the Cobra Strike up. But really any kind of resistance, strength, or stats, life, ring will be great here. The boots, we're just using Nat's boots because they're easy to get. They're cheap, they have 40 run walk, and they have dual res. We're really going to be looking for tri-res with movement speed boots, but we haven't been able to find any. The rest of your gear is pretty simple, really. It's going to be the standard as every other build where you're going to use skillers. You can use the skillers the whole way across for +1 martial arts down here. Or you could use something like a Sunder Charm. This is a fire one. You're going to want a lightning one. However, right now, I'm only usually running on player 2, and I haven't really found a Sunder to be needed since we have so much different elemental damage. But your charms are going to be simple. It's going to be +1 to martial arts. You're going to use your Torch and Annie, which I don't have yet. And then your small charms are most likely going to be resistance or magic find. You can find some like maximum damage run walks. They're not super good because we're not doing a ton of physical damage. We're doing mostly elemental damage. So this was taken, was this day 4? A ladder, I think. And realistically, once you get the 2 claws, you could switch to this build and be perfectly fine. Stuff farming like the pit and outer cloister is always good. Any of the terrorized zones you can probably run. I really like the Dry Hills, Hall of the Dead, Taurashas. Arcane Sanctuary is another good farming area, but it can be a little bit annoying when you come back around because the cycle from, like, let's say the top path to the right path or any other ones, you're going to lose charges. So at the start of each of those, you're going to have to build up your charges. But this build can pretty much farm anywhere. Once you get your resistances under control, usually I use Fade and anything that's dangerous, and my resistances are still low. But with Torch and Annie and a couple additional charms, you should have no problem capping out. Skill tree is kind of a mess. I'm still playing with trying to find what's the best here. You're going to want at least 1 point in Dragonflight. Try to get it from your Claw. Your Claw can give you the 1 point wonder in the Dragonflight, and it'll save you 3 skill points. You're going to want the Dragon Talon, and then you're also going to want at least 1 point into all of these. I've seen multiple different ways to build this, and I really don't know what the best way is, but I do know that so far this is working fine for me. On player 2, my second character is a BO Barbarian, so I just grabbed that and then solo with the Assassin here. We have no problem with any of the terrorized zones, Chaos Sanctuary, anything, we can do it. Worldstone Keep. All fantastic, all really easy. So I highly recommend the build. But with that said, let's get into the skills, and let's go and assume that you've never used a martial arts character before, because they weren't very powerful before this. So essentially the way they work is each of these skills will give you a charge of whatever type they are. So like Blades of Ice will give you 1 Blades of Ice if you hit with it. Each one of these can have 3 charges total. Phoenix Strike kind of changes it up a little bit. So if you have 1 charge of Phoenix Strike, you're going to drop a Meteor. And the Meteor has a delay. So if you kick something, you're not going to hit instantly with that Meteor. It's the same as like a Sorcerer's Meteor almost, that there is that delay. However, you're going to drop meteors very quickly because of how fast you're kicking with the Dragon Talon move. If you have 2 charges, which is what I recommend to run with because we're going with a lightning based, that's going to send the Chain Lightning out around you and does a ton of damage. If you have 3 charges, it's Chaos Ice Bolts. If you're not geared and you only have the claws, you probably want to run with the Chaos Ice Bolt. So when we first started out playing this build, what we ended up doing was the 3 charges of the Phoenix Strike, because the Chaos Ice Bolts, if they hit anything that's not immune to cold, they freeze in place solid. It's not like a chilled effect where they can still move. They're just frozen for the most part. The only thing that doesn't work on is like elite, specials, rares, unique bosses, and for whatever reason it seems like souls also can't be frozen, which I didn't know. I learned that recently. But once you're geared, you're most likely going to use the Chain Lightning. With Diablo, since he takes so long to spawn after you hit all of the seals, I usually just hit him once with Phoenix Strike and get 1 charge of this, and then just drop the meteors. You don't need to build up everything else on him. The meteor damage for Diablo just obliterates him. So the first skill that you'll max will be your Phoenix Strike, and then your Claws of Thunder, since we're going a lightning based. From there, there's different ways to build it. Personally, what I did was max Phoenix, max Claw of Thunder, max Fist of Fire. So now our meteors do a bunch of damage for when we need that single target damage, and we have a second element that does a decent amount of damage as well. Then I'm going to split between Tiger Strike and Dragon Talon. Really, once I started getting the 4 kicks, I started dropping more points into the Tiger Strike. So as you see, it just has damage. So if we have 3, that's 1,680% more damage, but that's only for the physical. That's not going to be increasing the Chain Lightning damage. But why that's important is that's increasing how much we're leeching as well, since you leech off the physical damage. And we are using the Cobra Strike here. It's going to be a 1 point wonder. And right now it's giving us life and mana steal of 160% for 1 point, if we have all 3 charges up. So essentially, you're going to have almost all of these running if you so choose. I generally eventually build all of them up, and we just look like a Christmas tree. We have all the charges. We're running around being crazy. So I usually run with 2 charges of Phoenix and then 3 of all the other ones, and then use the Dragon Talon to kick them and launch a bunch of stuff on the screen. There's also a lot of talk about Dragon Tail being really good. I haven't had time to experiment with that. A lot of people are saying that is the way to go. It's a lot better. I plan to try to do an updated video later once I'm more geared and have more time with the mechanics, and it'll actually be a guide rather than me just rambling about my findings with the build so far. In your Shadow discipline here, you can go ahead and just get the 1 point into weapon block and then down to fade. If you want a little bit of extra tankiness when you're not geared, getting a Shadow Master can be really nice. But it will cost you another 4 points, so that's something you're going to have to decide if you really want that. Mind Blast is also another really nice skill because of the stun length that it can convert, especially if you're not really geared. And Cloak of Shadows by itself is just amazing for blinding enemies. It's up to you if you want to put hard points into these, you absolutely can. I got lucky and my 1 claw gives me Mind Blast for free, so I actually saved the 2 skill points to get into here. But it's up to you. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to play this build and it's really fun. And there's also 0 into traps. I was playing around with the idea of getting Blade Shield for the 75% weapon damage. But even then, the claws really don't do that much. So I kind of opted not to. That's something that you can really go ahead and play with. And one of the other nice things about the Mosaic Claws is that they do have the Prevent Monster Heal already on them. I haven't had a chance to fight D-Clone. I missed his spawns, but I don't see a reason why this build couldn't kill him quite easily. So hopefully we can get a spawn here and test that out, but you should have no problems with it. For the Mercenary, we're going with a Prayer Mercenary just so he can heal a little bit, because right now he's not actually using any Life Leech, and he's pretty tanky. We're using a non-ethereal Thresher with an Insight in it because we don't have a better one. Generally you want this ethereal. The helmet is the new cure, and the reason we're using that is for the cleansing aura. Right now we're running a lot of Chaos Sanctuary and Worldstone Keep, which has a ton of poison in it. And having that cleansing aura on there is really nice. And just a simple treachery, and we got lucky this time and actually found a decent base to put this in quite early. And we're just doing this for the 45% increased attack speed and the chance to get that fade ability. The build's been really fun right now. The biggest issue with me personally is keeping up with all of the charges every 15 seconds, especially if you have to backtrack. I feel like Enigma will really help with that. And it's a really fun build, and it really doesn't take much to get going. Like I said, we leveled with the traps, and then we switched once we were able to get both the claws. Malgol really isn't very hard to get early on, especially if you're playing hardcore. And I expect to see a lot of these on the market as players upgrade their claws or quit the assassin. I know a lot of people seem to be just putting them in even claws without skills, just trying to get the build up and running. So you can probably snag some of those for less than a Malgol as ladder goes on. But that's it. Oh, I guess actually that's not it. I lied, chat. I lied. Stat points are simple. They are very simple. If you went with Greater Talons, you're going to need less strength and less dex. However, we went with the Runic because they have the fastest attack speed. You want fast claws simply so you can build up your charges faster. There is some talk about, maybe going with slower claws because of the next hit delay and stuff like that. I prefer these fast claws, like the Greater Talons, or if you can't get those, Runic Talons. But it's up to you. There's so many different ways to play this. There's a lot of theory crafting going on. There's a lot of math in the background of the community. So I don't think you can go wrong once you have these claws. Just kind of play with what's fun. And I highly recommend you getting into the build in this Season 3. My concern is they're going to change or nerf the build in Season 4, and you won't be able to play this. Hopefully they don't do that because it's been a long... Has it ever been a time to play Martial Arts Assassin? I can't think of a time that's ever been the time to play that, but now is the time to play Martial Arts Assassin before they change it or nerf it. So for your strength and dex, it's just literally enough to wear your claws and armor, really whatever you need. So if you can wear gear, you're good to go. And then the rest into vitality. You don't need any in energy. You just dump it into Vitality, and you're off to the races. Like I said, fun build. Switch between bursts of speed if you want to run faster, or you can go to fade if you want more survivability. That's it, chat. There's a bunch of different videos on my channel of live streams of me playing this. I will be live streaming the build as well, so feel free to hop in, ask questions. I can give updates in there if there are any as time goes. Like I said, I do not have enough playtime to say this is the way to play it. I need a lot more playtime. I need a lot more testing. I need to look at more theory crafting and math. But for now, you get those 2 claws. Just loosely follow what I'm doing here, and you should have a really good time. It's a great build, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. So like and subscribe, follow me on YouTube here, and hopefully I can see you guys in the live stream and we can theory craft and play around here and see what we're doing. But take care, guys. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.